And we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power Hour podcast. I'm here with Nick DeCourcy. Is that right, Nick?
DeCourcy. DeCourcy.
DeCourcy. Perfect. I probably should have asked you before, but Nick DeCourcy,
That's right.
advisor, M365 and Copilot advisor to SMBs, has his own podcast, has his own YouTube channel, and yeah, super excited to get stuck into this because I feel like Nick can be a great help of bridging that gap between kind of where we are now and also getting to a place where we want to be with Copilot. And Nick's done some amazing content and has been recently got the MVP. Nick, am I right in saying that for
Yeah,
Copilot?
that's right. Yeah, so just at the start of February, actually.
Amazing. Congratulations. That's a great
Thank you.
achievement. And
Thank you.
yeah, you've worked very hard for it. I can see by the backlog of the content you've produced. I guess, Nick, just for the people who don't know you, a quick introduction, kind of how you got to where you are today and where you are today.
Yeah, sure. So I am a consultant who really focuses on the small and medium-sized business market. I focused initially on Power Platform. And then Copilot came along, and I was really wowed by first what I'd seen with ChatGPT, and then a few months later the announcement of Microsoft 365 Copilot. And back when I was a kid, and I got I started coding. I'm not a coder, but I tried a little when I was a kid on my Amiga computer. Like, one of the first things that I wanted to do was get this computer to like be able to talk to me, and like almost be like a science fiction kind of, hey computer, do this for me, Star Trek or Iron Man, that kind of thing, So when I saw this, I was like, wow, this is what I've been waiting for the last 30 years. So I got really excited about that. Decided I wanted to really focus in what I was doing on that technology and introducing people to that technology, learning as much about it as I could myself, and then helping others to learn about it as well. And so now most of my business is focused on Copilot and AI more generally, whether that's adoption of Microsoft 365 Copilot, advisory in relation to AI strategy, and some aspects of small businesses that want to productize using the AI technology, whether that's putting out something that helps their customers more, or whether it's to do with taking their IP and using that to have another revenue stream there. So a few customers that are kind of on that line as well. So lots of interesting stuff. Never a dull day with everything that's going on with AI, but it's very, very exciting.
Yeah, I know, I love that, and it's a great introduction, Nick. Thank you. Just a quick kind of question in terms of what you're seeing every day with adoption. Like, I feel like for Power Platform, we've got Copilot Studio, and I understand, as you've just told me, you do focus a bit more broader than just Copilot. That's true, right? It's more generative AI and
Yeah.
adoption as well. I guess just in general, what are you seeing? What patterns are you seeing in terms of use cases that you're seeing consistently kind of throughout the small to medium sized businesses that you're working with?
Well, I think there's the basic promise of this thing is going to turn up, and suddenly you are saving X amount of time per day, and the way that you're going to do that is a little bit fluffy because everyone's life at work is very different. So this idea of adopting most software is to do with, you take something like QuickBooks, for example, and you sit people in a room and you say, okay, the way that you create an invoice is this, you press this button, you enter this data, you go through this process, it's going to send out the invoice and then you get payment for it. And pretty much everyone's use of that is going to be the same. The kind of standard deviation on that is going to be fairly small, in terms of what people are doing with it. But when we think about something like Copilot, it's a lot more fluffy than that, because we're not saying, hey, these are the buttons and everyone press this button and you're going to then achieve X. It's, okay, what is the X that you're trying to achieve personally? What do you enjoy doing? What is kind of tiresome to you or takes up a lot of your time? And you might have two people who are doing much the same job, sitting very close to one another, who are using Copilot in fairly different ways, so that variation is greater. So getting people into the idea of, well, this is to do with forming a habit, this is to do with grasping new skills, really thinking about how you're going to use this tool as an assistant to what you want to achieve, not just necessarily in terms of I want to achieve task A, task B, and task C, but also what makes me feel good about being at work, like what is it that I need assistance with. That kind of mindset is very new and is very different. And I think in a lot of smaller businesses where the tendency is to kind of buy something, do a training on it, and then move on. There isn't this kind of appetite constantly of like long-term change. It's more like iterative change that's like jump to jump to jump. I think that could be a bit of a challenge because you don't have the people within the organisation necessarily who are used to that type of change. You don't have, if you're talking about small business MSPs or other IT contractors, you don't have people who are used to necessarily deploying that type of change. So how do we actually go about this journey? How do we build a narrative around it? Like even the idea of the narrative you're building is kind of new in some cases. So I do think the challenges for smaller businesses are very, very different than they may be in some larger businesses. But I think the opportunity is fantastic. And there's lots of people who are very interested in doing this, very much want to learn, very much want to deploy it. But actually building up those skills and that kind of muscle memory as to how do you do this over time is the most important thing that I'm doing with people every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like what you said on the mindset sense of things because people don't really think about it in that way. But I think, I've gone to a lot of these kind of conferences and workshops and they really emphasize kind of your intention before approaching this kind of technology because it can influence the prompt you're giving it and therefore what you get, etc. Super, super interesting. I guess in terms of kind of training and upskilling people, what are some of the things that you and your company kind of do when you go into these businesses to help that adoption, to kind of make it a bit more easier for the people adopting this technology?
Well, one of the big things is to engage with leadership, whatever that leadership looks like in the context of whatever change is going on. And sometimes that'll be just the owner of the business, sometimes it'll be a bigger team of people. But really to engage on this point of, do you really want to start this journey? Like, do you understand the journey that you're starting on? Do you understand that that playing with these tools is important? I think the more PC way of saying that for some businesses is like exploring or so on. But I like the term playing. Like, do you get some time to like play with them? Are you able to take an afternoon to work out what you can do with this and really kind of learn that? And unless you've got leadership that is on board with that idea of this isn't just about sitting people in a room for an hour and teaching them how to use this, that's some of it, but we need to give them time to really experiment with it. You're not going to get all the value out of it. So that leadership engagement is kind of step number one. There's obviously the technical readiness. There's the whole how do we deploy it? What do you need to understand? Do the people who are managing Microsoft 365 either within the business, or more often than not, we're talking about people outside of the business, whether it's an MSP or other type of IT contractor, do they really understand what they're getting into? And the answer to that, I found, it's getting better now, but over the course of the last year, the answer to that has often been no. Fundamentally, there isn't that understanding of it. This is kind of seen as a more amorphous, like cutting-edge thing that we don't want to be involved in. It's not what we're doing every day. And really having a dialogue with those organisations about like how can they support this and what are they looking to do with it. And then there's the training piece of it as well, the getting teams up to speed. And I think that goes beyond just the core materials that Microsoft shares around how do you use a product like Copilot. A lot of what I spend my time talking about is responsible AI. I think this is something that is hugely important and really isn't prioritised enough. We're trying to get people to understand a new technology and get running with it. It's taken us 30 years to get to a point where people are suspicious of those emails that are coming in from a Nigerian prince, right? So, and still, this is a problem. This is a major problem for us. It continues to be. And when we think about AI, like getting people to a point where they understand the risks involved with it, where they understand how to use it responsibly. I was just having a conversation, a bit of a coaching session with someone just before we jumped on this call, and one of the things that came up was, well, there's a willingness to try different AI solutions for different types of things. Like sometimes Copilot isn't necessarily the best fit, just the tone of it isn't what you want to see. You might prefer something else. That's fine. But have you read the privacy policy? Have you read the terms of service? Do you understand what's happening to that file that you're uploading as soon as you've uploaded it? What's the risk that you're creating with it? And there isn't a good awareness of that out there, and kind of mitigating that and making sure everyone understands that, along with having the skills of using the tool, in my opinion, is very important.
Yeah, 100%. And Nick, just to pry on that a little bit, what are the risks of, for example, people, I think a use case that's come up more generally for me is people uploading company Excel files, etc., into ChatGPT public, well, not public accounts, but personal accounts. So the Copilot, the generative AI isn't limited to just the company, as some Copilot editions are. So taking that specific use case and perhaps expanding on it, what are some of the risks associated to that?
Well, I mean, it's the same set of concerns that we've had for a long time when we've thought about shadow IT, right? You don't just want someone going. This is a problem of like the SaaS age, right? We've lost control of software. Like software is something that sits on the internet. It's not something that sits on your computer, right? So you don't just want someone like rocking up to HubSpot and being like, "Hey, I want a new CRM system," when within your organization you use Dynamics 365, right? Because that's company data that's then leaking out of your organization. And even if it's been set up perfectly and you know the controls are there, what happens when the person who owns it leaves? What happens when you get the bill for all these services that you've taken on? Who's paying for it? Is it the IT department? So there's lots of different issues that come up there that we're very familiar with. And then we move into this idea of, like shadow AI, where people are using AI services that aren't associated with the business. I think the most recent Microsoft statistic was in small businesses, 80% of AI users are bringing their own AI to work. So they're just using whatever it is they want to use. So you go and upload that file. Well, maybe nothing happens. Maybe it's fine. Maybe it's not a problem at all. But the worst case scenario is, well, number one, is it stored securely by the provider? We don't know. Are they going to use that information to train their model in the future? So, is someone going to ask a question that's kind of related to the stuff that you uploaded, and suddenly they get your proprietary information spat out of ChatGPT, and so on and so forth. I mean, a lot of this is kind of theoretical concerns, but that's the kind of things that keep IT pros up at night around securing data and what can happen with data. And I mean, it's just good practice, really, to treat your customers' information or to treat your work's information, if you're an employee, in the way that you would expect your own information to be treated. And just because it saves you a few minutes to go off and find a random app and then start uploading all the information there doesn't mean that that's a good thing to do. So that understanding of, not all of these things are created equal. Not all of these businesses are, there's a lot that just spring up, and there's like new AI products, and you'll get these like AI influencers who are like, oh, you should go and use this. This is going to save you like 87 years over the next 3 minutes, or whatever it is they come up with. And then you go and you look at it, and one of the first things that I'll always do is, well, what do the terms of service and the privacy policy say? And a lot of these, they don't have a terms of service or a privacy policy, because the people who are making these services are prioritizing getting out a product and thinking about all these other things later. And if you're just trying to like work out your kid's birthday party or something like that with AI, yeah, go for it, that's fine. But if you're taking the customer list of a business that doesn't belong to you, and that's the private data of all of your customers, then you probably should be a little bit more careful with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think these are some key considerations for people to look at when they are using AI, because, even though we are what are we in? Year 3, I think it is, Nick.
Year three. It
Yes,
feels like year 30, but yes, I think we're year three.
yeah, year 3 since it kind of exploded. On these AI influencers, because I'm seeing them all over LinkedIn, and I'm sure you are too, which is what this conversation is coming out of. There's so much technology out there for generative AI. There's ChatGPT, there's DeepSeek, which has been in the news now a bunch. There's now my mind's drawing a blank, but there are so many. Which ones? Which one should people use? Because there's too many for people to kind of manage efficiently. So I guess, what do you use in your day to day, and what do you kind of recommend companies to use specifically, or is it per case?
I think it is per case. I mean, it depends on what you're trying to do. The easy path, if you're an organisation that already has Microsoft 365, is Microsoft 365 Copilot. And I wouldn't say that's because Microsoft 365 Copilot is necessarily the most cutting edge AI. You know, when we're talking about cutting edge AI, and you know, this model is better at answering PhD level questions than this model over here. Well, you know, the receptionist at your local dentist's clinic isn't generally spending their time answering PhD level questions every afternoon anyway, you know, so that kind of differential is almost irrelevant in my opinion. What is relevant is how easily can you get it out to your people in your organisation? How well integrated is it into the management that you're already doing? Do you want to add a whole bunch of additional complexity? And if you've spent time working out all of your security and compliance stuff in Microsoft 365, why give yourself the headache of starting from scratch with something else, which is what you would have to do if you're really going to give this service the content that you want to use. By the same standard, if you don't use Microsoft 365, if you use Google Workspace, then try out what they've got first, because of exactly the same reasons. Like, I'm not going to advocate to anyone who's like, I really like using Google Workspace, of, well, you should try Microsoft 365 Copilot first. You shouldn't. You should try Gemini first. And then beyond that, if that's not going to work for you, if there's some reason you want something different, then there are other business class systems out there. There's things like Amazon's Q, there's Sana, there's a whole bunch of different tools out there that you can use that are either based on that business's proprietary AI, or in the case of Amazon, you can choose models, or in the case of Sana, I think that's built on OpenAI's stuff. So there's different options out there. Now, the idea of you're going to jump from like service to service, and you know, we have these chat services like DeepSeek, like ChatGPT, like Claude. Sure, I mean, try them out, but go back to that issue of like, what are you going to do in terms of data? For businesses, the differentiator isn't how good is this at answering a PhD level question, how good at this is a competition math, or whatever it may be that you're thinking about. It's how well can it respond to your customer's email. And that is a function of how good is the model. That is important, but it's much more a function now of what's the contextual data that we're giving it to be able to do that. What records are we giving it access to, and so on and so forth. And once you think about it from that point of view, unless you're going to go out and build tools yourself, then the funnel of we have all of these options out there down to the things that the types of businesses that I'm working with are really going to choose goes down to just 3 or 4 options. And because I work in the Microsoft ecosystem, most of the time I'm talking to people who the decision is Microsoft 365 Copilot.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. And I guess on the note of custom AI, people going off and trying to build it themselves, is there ever any moments where you recommend to a customer to invest in that kind of technology? Because, you know, from my understanding, the overhead is quite high in that sense. I mean, you know, for example, Microsoft try and make it quite easy for you with the Azure AI Foundry, and there's quite a few things that you can kind of experiment with there. But I guess, what's that gap between recommending people, I guess respectfully, models that are trained for us and models that people train themselves?
Well, I think there's different aspects of that. If you're talking about, I mean, some of the things that we're seeing now with the existing off-the-shelf models is the opportunity for fine-tuning, right? So this idea that you take some of your data and make the model do the specific thing that you want it to do better by fine-tuning it, that's a lot more accessible. I mean, when people are like, I want to train my own model, it's like you don't have enough data. Like you just don't have enough data for what you're talking about. If you're talking about like training a form recognizer or something like that, sure. If you're talking about I want my own proprietary LLM, then no, that's not gonna work. But I mean those tools that are there, the fact that you can use AI Foundry and go in and try different models out, it is useful. Like one of the projects that I'm working on right now is to do with a customer-facing AI app where there's a need to interpret certain data that customers are providing, and there's a question about how much is it going to cost to do this, how quickly can we do it, and the factor of, well, which model are you going to use to do that factors into that. Like, can 4.0 do this? Sure, but is it more expensive than some of the other options that are there? Maybe. And so you think about it like that. So I would say there's different parts of it. One of the key conversations, I think, is a lot of people will come to this issue if they don't have much knowledge of it, with the assumption that what we're doing when we deploy something like Microsoft 365 Copilot is we're taking all of their business data and we're training an AI model for them. That's a very common perception of, we're paying to have a model trained and then we have a model that's trained on our data. And this desire I want to train my own AI often comes from a misunderstanding of what a product like Copilot is actually doing, where we're talking about retrieval augmented generation rather than having a custom model for each customer. And so I see a lot of requests that are along those lines, but I would say a lot of it comes from misunderstanding the products that are out there rather than some kind of legitimate need to have a truly customized AI.
Yeah, interesting. And I feel like I've seen the same things in the sense of, especially when I got started. Like I'll be completely honest. I was as your AI Foundry got introduced, I started digging in. I was like, oh, this is really cool. And then I dug in a bit more, and I was like, oh, like this is serious. Like this is people actually developing, not from the ground up per se, because these models are respectfully available to you, but it was definitely a learning curve in the sense of understanding what was going on. So I can only imagine actually developing what's going on and the overhead that would look in that sense. Nick, something people are super excited about, including Microsoft, is autonomous agents. So where are we with autonomous agents? Like, when are they going to start taking our jobs? It's my question.
When are they going to start taking? I don't know. When do you think they're going to start taking our jobs?
That's a good question. I think we're far off. Let's talk about Copilot Studio, because that's the one I have the most experience with. I haven't used the chat GPT. I think it's called Operations. I'm not sure what it's called.
So that's they've come out with this operator agent, which is really their first agent. Yeah. But Copilot Studio, I mean, we've just got the tooling for autonomous agents. So have you played around with autonomous agents yet?
I haven't. No, not specifically. Okay. No. And so how was that experience?
Well, I mean, I would say there's a vision there that a lot of people will have a vision for what they want to do with this that's far beyond where the technology sits right now. That would be my view on it. Like, actually connecting. If people are very excited about AI, then they have a certain perception about what this is going to look like at some point in the future. And I think there's a benefit to whatever tech company it is, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's Google, whether it's OpenAI, of obviously exciting those people who have that vision, right? There's a benefit to that. There's a marketing benefit to that. How well does that connect into the products that we actually can get our hands on right now? There's still a way to go, an autonomous agent. I was just watching a a video that another person who works in this space had a video out where they were having an autonomous agent doing something autonomously that I would probably caution, are you sure you want to do that right now? You know, you can have it write stuff on your behalf, you can have it send stuff on your behalf, but you know, where do you get your human back in the loop? Do you really want to go down that road? And I mean, the answer might be that sometimes there's a low risk thing that, yeah, you do want to go down that road. But am I advising people just to use AI off of its leash and let it go? No. No, I don't think we're quite there yet, in my opinion. There'll be a lot of people who'll disagree with me. I mean, there are a lot of people who are like, yeah, this genuinely could do like 80% of my job. But when I've dug into it, I've never seen an example where that really speaks to me to be 100% true. Like, this is still about, you know, I have a task and I can get a lot of assistance with that task so that I can put my brain power somewhere else. But am I going to totally take my mind off of it? It's kind of like when you're a team manager, right? You have a group of people working with you in your team and you're the supervisor or the manager. Like, by empowering that team, you get the ability to, like, amplify what you could do. You get the ability to amplify what the team can do and to take your brain power and put it somewhere else. But can you 100% switch off? No, you never can, because that person who does X might call off sick one day or whatever it may be. So I think the same is true. But it's certainly interesting. I like the idea of autonomous agents. I like the execution of it. I think the extensibility tooling that we have within Copilot is one of the things that really sets it apart from all the other tools that I've played with up until now. However, I do see the everything being an agent kind of as being a bit problematic, because when we're talking about an agent in SharePoint or one that you're creating from Agent Builder in BizChat, that's an entirely different beast than, you know, an autonomous agent in Copilot Studio, at least as it stands right now. And the fact that they all are called the same thing, I think, just makes it a bit more confusing than it needs to be.
Yeah, I agree. And I think on that as well, in relation to personality, like, I like writing, I write for myself, I write on my blog. You read something that I wrote today. And there's a lot, it's a, you know, I wouldn't say therapeutic, we'll call it therapeutic. It's nice for me to sit down and write and kind of get my thoughts on paper, and I like that. I guess, when do we get to a point where these autonomous agents kind of know us? Like, they know how Nick writes, they know what he likes, they know what he doesn't like, and they can kind of put that into, you know, respond to an email on your behalf, or even one that knows what I like, etc. I always wondered how these agents would get our personalities in the mix, because personally I wouldn't want something that's just giving generic answers, because I like, you know, replying to messages on my own on my LinkedIn, because I like that personable touch to it. But I guess there could be something could be said for a time where these agents can know us personally in that sense, and can be trained on many accounts of data that we've had, and do things for us. So I guess it's kind of a similar question, but a little bit different. I mean, how far away are we from that?
Well, I think that's the $1 million question, but I think the more important consideration there is, where do we want to go in that vein? I mean, going back to the point that you made about, I think I may have mentioned it to start off with, about like the AI influencers that we see on social media, right? And a lot of that is, well, if you put together this tool and this tool and this tool, I'm going to generate a month of content for you in like 4 minutes or something like that, you know. And there's a heck of a lot of that out there right now. But I kind of look at it and I'm like, what's the point? like it just becomes this like soulless like dumpster of crap, basically.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like that's where we're gonna land with it, because it doesn't really matter how good or how bad the output of the the AI is. Like, the reason, a lot of the time, the reason I'll read something that's kind of more creative on something like LinkedIn is because by doing so, I'm actually understanding someone and connecting with them in some way, right? I mean, not necessarily like technical information, but something that's more kind of to do with someone's opinion or their history or something like that. Can AI create that? Sure, but it's not actually someone's history. It's not actually someone's opinion. I mean, the way that I use AI with the stuff that I write is that I'll quite often run something through AI after I've written it. So I may seek an opinion on, am I being too harsh on something, for example? What's the sentiment that the audience is likely to take away from what I'm saying, or something like that? So I'll use it as an assistant post-creation. Once I've actually got my thoughts on a piece of paper, I might occasionally, if I'm not sure, I'm doing a training or something and I'm not really sure of like how to frame an issue, I might say, okay, this is the thing that I want to convey. How might I frame this? How might I break it down? So I might start, if I'm having this kind of writer's block almost on something, but there would never be a time, and I couldn't see a time, and I don't think it matters how good it gets, that I'm just going to say, okay, AI, go for it. Take control of my LinkedIn, take control of my YouTube, take control of my slide preparation for my training, because what's the value of me in that at that point?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, like you said, Nick, kind of almost echoing what you said, I think I use AI best when I give it my ideas and try and, get something from that. Like, I already have the ideas. I already have the content, so to speak. It's written somewhere, but you run it through AI. It can help kind of piece those gaps together. And like you said at the beginning, I think it takes away a lot of that mental capacity that can be used for when you're actually doing the work. So I feel like for me, that's where myself and AI have a good relationship, so to speak. Nick, I'm curious about the way you run your business, and specifically kind of the balance between training and consulting and speaking to developers about what they need to be doing, if at all. What is that balance like?
I mean, I would say that increasingly my business is pointed towards the advisory services versus the kind of direct training. Advisory and more coaching type of stuff, the more like free form. I'm still doing, I have a training for X and I have the slide deck for it and the examples, and I'm going to rock up and do that. Pretty much everything I do is virtual. So whatever that looks like, it's kind of sitting here or, sitting at my other desk and doing that stuff. And then a good proportion of what I'm doing is also to do with that kind of learning and ideation and so on. It's like, from my point of view, when I'm advising someone, the fee that they're paying me isn't for that time. It's for the time that's invested in being able to have that conversation, right? So, so a priority for me every week is spending time learning stuff and having something interesting to bring into those conversations. And that's why I really prioritize that advisory and more freeform coaching over, a training course, because it's far easier to bring those nuggets of this is the new, this is what I'm excited about, this is the stuff that I've learned into those more free-form conversations than it is to, be updating a slide deck every week to be able to change up that training course, So, and then in terms of developer stuff, it really depends on the project. Like right now, I'm fairly heavy on stuff that does involve developers, but that's kind of strange for me. That just so happens that the mix of projects I'm working on right now, I've got a handful where I am working with a third party to build stuff, but that isn't necessarily normal for me. So I'm happy to do that when the need arises, but that's not something that I generally look to do. That's not necessarily what I'm selling myself as, if that makes sense.
It does. And it's interesting how, well, not interesting because I feel like a lot of people are virtual nowadays, but I guess And of course, being virtual gives, it unlocks the world in a sense. You can speak to someone, and I believe you live in Ohio in America, so you can speak to someone all the way in the UK, for example. Do you feel like you lose something when you do something virtually in opposed to doing it in person? This is something I think about quite often, and I think I'd be interested to hear kind of an advisor's take on that.
No, not at all. I think, when I started my business, so I'm 3.5 years into doing this now, and I'd spent prior to doing this nearly 20 years in, with the exception of the pandemic times, being in an office or being somewhere present with people every single day.
Yeah.
And so I've got a lot of experience of doing that, attending meetings, like doing live workshops, whatever it would be. And that wasn't in IT. Like my background is in operations leadership across a number of different types of businesses. So the opportunity that has presented itself by being able to help people all over the place. I mean, the other morning I had a client in Malaysia. Like, it was my first meeting of the day, and she was about to go to bed. Like, she was doing the meeting from home about Copilot, and it would be impossible to do that. Like, if your only tool was like writing an email or taking a phone call, it'd be impossible to do that. This technology of being able to sit in front of a screen and work through Teams makes it comfortable to do that. It makes it easy to share examples of stuff, bring a screen up, bring a document up in a way that you just can't do it when you're like meeting with someone at Starbucks and you haven't brought the right file, like it back in the day, like that just didn't work, like I remember having sessions where I was sitting having a coffee, going through my physical papers, and I'm like, oh no, I don't have that with me, I'm going to have to send that to you later, and that just doesn't come up with that. Personally, one of the things that is a thing that I've been dealing with as well is about 5 years ago I started suffering from hearing loss. And so because of that, I actually find that I'm able to engage a lot better doing something like this than I am in person. Particularly when I'm going to client premises and I don't know what that room is going to be like. Is it a noisy environment? Is it a very large room where there'll be a lot of space between people? Is it a smaller room? Is it echoey? All of these things now have an impact on my ability to engage that didn't exist before I started suffering from hearing loss. And so my level of comfort with I can put on a pair of earphones and I can hear everyone in the meeting equally allows me not to worry about that in a way that kind of stresses me out a bit when I'm going out and doing stuff in person. I still will do that, but the majority of my time is spent in front of a computer screen now.
Oh, and thank you for being so open about that, Nick. And I'm so happy that technology kind of bridged that gap in a way for you to be able to engage the way that you want to, because even in this short conversation, I feel like you're like me in the sense of everything you do, you want it to be quality, and obviously you'd want to be able to hear the people who are asking you those questions or who have concerns about what you're teaching, so that's super awesome. I guess I'm always curious about people's philosophies in why they started their business. So why did you start your business, Nick?
Well, my background wasn't IT, but I'd always been interested in it. I'd always been engaged with it at work. I'd always been the person who would put my hand up for technology projects, right the way going back to when I started work. I actually trained as a sound designer for theatre, which I find kind of slightly entertaining now that I just talked about my hearing loss. Like had I decided to be a sound designer for theatre, I'd be a lot more stressed about that than I have to be right now.
Right.
But yeah, that's what I trained to be, and then I ended up getting my degree in technical theatre, doing a little bit of work in theatre. I did a bit of fringe theatre in London. I did once do a show in one West End venue, but my efforts didn't get reviewed very highly in the press.
West End in London?
Yeah, so it was a West End venue. It wasn't a West End theatre, but we did.
Oh,
My friend and I actually got a review in the Metro for our efforts, and it
and
was
how was it?
terrible. It was absolutely terrible. I was like, "This isn't for me. I can't do this. I can't be getting like. How often do you see a theatre review and like the lighting and sound is called out? Like, not very often. So,
Yeah.
so I'm like, this wasn't for me. So I then went for a career in education, and I worked in a high school that was trying to become a performing arts specialist to start off with. I then
Hmm.
went on to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London. I moved up to Sheffield Hallam University. I was there as head of events there. But every job that I had, there was this component of technology. You know, at the high school, I implemented a work management system for our facilities staff. At RADA, I implemented a scheduling system for timetabling because that didn't exist at that point. When I was at Hallam, I worked through there was a new system for our graduation that I was working through. There was a new system that we were trying to do, trialing OneNote, and I think it was Windows 7 tablets at the time, the first time that you kind of got like tablet PC kind of thing, and trying to de-paper the offices that we were working with. You know, that problem I was talking about of going out for coffee and not having the right paper. We were trying to eliminate that. So I'd always been really invested in technology, and that went right the way through moving to the States. I ended up being the operations director at a small art museum in Cincinnati, and again was still doing technology. And so I got to a point where I was like, you know, the most logical thing for me to do next is to try to do this technology thing because it really, I'm really passionate about it. I enjoy it. But also, I think I have a lot to contribute to this that's different to a lot of the people I've worked with in technology because I have that history of doing all these other things and seeing it from the other perspective and being involved in the operational output of technology projects rather than just being the person who goes in and implements them. And so I decided to try that out, and initially I thought, you know, all of my business is going to come within, you know, a 30-mile radius of where I'm sitting. It's going to be through my contacts in Cincinnati, etc., etc., etc. And what I found, particularly with going out and starting a YouTube channel and that kind of stuff, was that suddenly my ability to connect with people just went global. And I've worked with people in I don't even know how many different countries now. I've certainly worked across 4 continents at this point
Wow.
from my office here in Ohio, which is just amazing. But the reason that I wanted to do it and wanted to start doing this was just, you know, this had been an interest right the way through my life. I'd always been excited by this stuff, and I wanted to try out something different. And so far, it's going pretty well, and I think I'm getting a good opportunity to give back more to the people I'm working with than perhaps I did when I was doing this other stuff previously.
Yeah, no, I love that. And honestly, the reason why I reached out and why I was so curious about kind of what you did is because, you know, maybe I'm just not seeing it, but I think businesses, specifically within the Power Platform Copilot space, I don't see so often. Now there is a lot, but I don't see so often, at least from what I can see on LinkedIn. And I found it really interesting that, you know, you specialize very specifically on Copilot, M365, and, you know,
Mm.
generative AI in general, which I thought was an awesome gap. Um, what advice would you give to someone who's looking to start a business within the Power Platform space?
I mean, I think that you need to decide what it is you want to do in
Mm,
the Power Platform. You know, like I am not a technical expert compared to a lot of technical experts out there. You know, there's a lot of people who, you know, when I record a demo for YouTube, for example, like the demo you see on screen is probably my 4th time of trying to remember how to do something or go through the
mm,
instructions on how to do it because that's not what I'm doing every day.
yeah.
Like the niche that I have found myself in is that I'm an opinionated guy. I have a view on what you tell me about your business and how you can improve it, and I'm happy to share that. And my base technical understanding is Microsoft 365, Power Platform, Copilot, etc., etc. And I can connect those dots, and I can connect those dots maybe better than someone who has a lot more technical expertise than me, can be a lot more hands-on with this stuff, but doesn't have the business experience that I have of being in those different roles. So what can you bring to it, and what do you want to do? Like, if you want to learn how to be a Power Platform developer, then it's a wonderful thing to learn, because there's so much content out there to help you build those skills. But is that immediately going to translate, even if you have really good skills, is it going to translate into a customer base that's hiring you to do that? Not necessarily. You might need to think about, who am I going to work with? Who am I going to partner with? Who do I need a relationship with to make this work? So I think there's lots of different routes out there, and everyone, if you have skills, if you have knowledge that relates to those skills, and you have an honest desire to help people, then I think there's probably a route for everyone right now. But that route isn't necessarily going to be the same. It has to be your personal route. I mean, your journey with this is interesting. I know I was reading a little bit about your history earlier on, and I don't know. I think your answer to this would probably be a little bit different to mine, but I feel like there would be nuggets of similarity there, because you've specialised in a different way, but it is a way that's relevant to your history and what you wanted to achieve, and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, I think definitely with me, it was a sense of education, because whilst there are amazing people out there making awesome content, the Power Platform community in general / Dynamics, it's incredible. One of the best I've seen within tech. And this is coming from someone who graduated not too long ago. So someone who was really trying to make up in his mind and what he should do. Like, I had a lot of options basically in terms of what I could do from university. I decided it would be this, and I didn't really notice it until about a few months ago, but I was like, I felt like I was in one place and I managed to get here. And with some guidance, I could have done it with a bit less stress, a little bit less time. And I think the main goal is to just give people that guidance. So yeah, I love your point in the sense of, I feel like there's a route for everyone, because I feel like an excuse I hear, and I don't mean to disrespect anyone by calling it an excuse, at least in my head it's an excuse for what I tell myself, is that people think that everything's taken, all the opportunities are gone, but it's just simply not the case. Everyone has a unique story to tell, everyone has unique experiences, and as you mentioned, Nick, your experiences has shaped what you can do today. And even though it's not a technical developer position, you have become an advisor, and maybe that couldn't have been the case without your experiences. So yeah, I think my main goal is just to empower people with this, and just let them know that they can do it, even if they are struggling right now.
I think there's a tendency now for people to get to a point of like over-promising and under-delivering, in terms of what you say is almost more important than what you can do, kind of thing. And I think I would caution people against that. You need to be authentic about what you can do and about what you bring to the table, and have a sense of pride in what you what you can achieve. And I think there's a tendency for people to think, well, number one, I'll get people reach out to me who basically want me to tell them their career plan, and I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm happy to help people, but like that's not my place to tell you your career plan. And then there's other people who want to run before they can walk, in terms of you've completed Power Platform Fundamentals course and suddenly you're an expert on it, and you want to go off and share everything. And I mean that's valid from your perspective, but at the same time, take some pride in having the right answer and actually giving people the right information. And I struggle with this a lot because I'll get some people reach out to me and ask for advice, and sometimes the advice has to be like, slow down,
Mm.
slow down. You have time to learn and to get better at stuff, and not you don't have to be you don't have to be the expert. You can choose to be someone who's learning, and that's valid as well, and that's
Yeah.
fine. But I think everyone's so rushed to be in this kind of expert position now. It's almost invalid to not be good at something,
Yeah.
and I feel it's a big risk. I mean, I've got a 4-year-old son, and I really struggle with the idea of like what is this going to look like in terms of everyone um, wanting to just jump to the end of whatever
Yeah.
it is in, like 18 years' time when he's finishing college. Like what
Yeah.
is that going to look like? And what advice would I give now? What can I start doing now to help him with that? And it's something I struggle with.
Yeah.
Because it just is. I feel like we're just drowning under this weight of everyone wanting to be almost like the center of attention with everything, and I
Yeah.
find it difficult to say that because obviously like I write stuff that I think people want to read, and I make
Yeah.
videos that I think people want to watch, and there's lots of people who probably look at that and be like, oh no, that arsehole's starting up again, like droning on about this stuff. So yeah, I guess it's kind of pot and kettle kind of thing, but yeah, it's something that I do struggle with.
It's pressure, isn't it, Nick? And then, honestly, I see it with everyone in and around, their 20s, early 20s, even, I have two brothers, which are 15, um, twin brothers, and I can see the comparison, not specifically in them, but in everyone.
Hmm.
Everyone's just so accessible nowadays, and it's so easy to wake up and the first thing you're doing straight out of bed is comparing yourself to the next person and the
Hmm.
next person and the next person after that. And I think sometimes it's nice to just take a step back and say, hey, it wasn't simple for me to get here as well. Like, there was a lot of this and a lot of that and a lot of twists and a lot of turns. Like, it wasn't just wake up one day and this person has X or is an expert. Like, this person messed up many deployments. This person didn't hit X deadlines. Like, these are things that happen to
Hmm.
real people. You
Hmm.
just don't see that side. Like, no one's going to post on LinkedIn, hey, just missed the deadline and, leave me likes. Like, no, that's not what happens. LinkedIn, I think, is specifically dangerous because I used to get really stressed when I looked on LinkedIn, because it was just a comparison trap, right? Like, you go
Hmm.
in and people just post achievements. There is no negativity that I've seen personally on LinkedIn, which can make it really hard for people. So I appreciate those
Hmm.
words on that, Nick. And I always like to ask this question at kind of towards the end of the episode. And you don't have to answer if you don't want, but I'm always curious in people's philosophies on this. So, what does happiness mean to you?
Uh, what does happiness mean to me? Um, I mean, I think that's changed a lot over time, actually.
Mm.
Like, I think I find a lot more um, contentment um, in the day to day of what I can do within my life
Yeah.
versus having these like big, ambitious, unrealistic dreams that striving towards. Like my life today is very different to where I thought it might be or how I thought it might be back um, 20 years ago. But, there are certain things that have happened that, bring me far more joy than I ever thought they would. Like, I didn't really understand until I had a kid, like the level of joy that people get out of that. Like, I'd never
Yeah.
really got it. Like, I knew people said it, but I didn't really get it, and
Hmm.
like it's just like it seems like in comparison to like what you think when you're younger, um almost like a silly thing, but it isn't. And I feel like I'm painting myself as like an old man now. Like,
Not at all. I
gonna,
love this.
you're going to be like, okay, boomer.
Never, Nick. I promise.
What does happiness mean to you?
Oh gosh, I've never been asked back that question. That I think at this point, it's ending the day knowing I did my best.
Hmm.
I think that's what's the most important to me. Like going to bed saying, "Hey, like X wasn't perfect, Y wasn't the best." Like, but you did your best. You did what you could. You focused. You put the time in. You put the effort in. You couldn't do what you wanted, but hey, like, there's always tomorrow. And you know what? I think happiness, even in some twisted, dark way, is that understanding that maybe there isn't tomorrow, right? You know,
Hmm.
like just appreciate every moment you've got. Man, I struggle with it. Like it's hard, and I think it's going to be a journey. And I think the pursuit of happiness, ironically, is what is making everyone miserable.
Oh,
But yeah,
I agree. I think the realization that everyone is struggling in their own way is something that maybe takes different amounts of time for people to get to, but it is
mm,
the reality, you know. Like I think we can actually empathize with everyone else more so through the fact that we all struggle than we
mm,
perhaps can in all of these different like happy factors that come, because you know the things that make you happy probably aren't the things that make me happy, or the things that I see on Instagram that apparently are making someone else happy are, you know, not for me, you know. But
mm,
the fact that we do all struggle, and most of us I think are trying our best, and particularly when you get a situation where someone else connects with you over that, I think is really important. That's a really important way of connecting with someone and showing that you care. I think it might be counterintuitive that like the memories of joy come through the happy times, but I think there's a certain joy in connecting with someone over the fact that like you understand and you get it and you're there for them. And that happened to me recently. I had to spend most of the month of January in the UK because of my mother was having some health problems. Um, and so it screwed up a lot of things that I was trying to do for work.
yeah,
And there are a lot of people who I'm working with who I don't really know too well who cared, you know, and understood that I was struggling and understood that that was just life. And that was
mm,
very important. That was a very important point of connection.
yeah.
Um, and I feel like this has become a very non-technical podcast at this point, but
We always
uh,
get like that towards the end, Nick.
but yeah, I think it's really important, and I think to bring it back to the technology thing, like you know, there are lots of people struggling with what's going on in the world right now, with you know
Yeah.
the tech and what is this going to mean, what's it going to mean for my job, and so on and so forth. And it's okay to not be like happy and positive about the fact that we're talking about deploying stuff that might take your job away in 6 months. I mean that's
Mm,
okay. It's okay to have fears. It's
yeah.
okay to have concerns.
Right.
But that's just the reality of life, that things change and stuff comes along and you don't always have control over all of it. So you can just do your best.
Mm,
And we try to do our best. I try to be as honest as I can with the people who do have concerns, who talk to me about it. I
mm,
try to do good stuff with what I do for businesses, you know, like I've had people say, I want to eliminate all my team.
mm.
And I'm like, well, this technology isn't there right now, and you know, I probably don't want to work with you if that's your only goal
Right.
is
Yeah, yeah.
that. So you have a choice, you know, and I think that's an important factor, that we connect with people over these things that stress us out or don't seem quite right, and we can all help each other to succeed a bit better every day.
I love that, Nick. That I think that's an awesome ending segment to this episode. And by the way, just out of curiosity, why do you live in America? Because you don't have an American accent.
My wife imported me.
Nice.
Back before there were tariffs, if she'd had to pay 25%, I don't think she would have bothered. But yeah, she imported me years ago.
Love to hear it. Yeah, would be eager to hear what Ohio's like as well. But we're reaching the end of the hour. Nick, thank you so much for your time. I always like to roll out the red carpet at the end of the episode, let the people know where they can find you, what you're up to. The floor is yours.
Well, come and connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll say lots of positive stuff and nothing negative. Go take a look at my YouTube. Hopefully that can help you out. I do have my website, brightideasagency.com, if you want to connect with me over any projects, or you're interested in some training or even some on-demand training I've got there. Go take a look. There's a good course on responsible AI. We talked about that a little bit during our conversation, and I put together a course specifically on responsible AI. So if that's something you're interested in finding out more about, that's there as well.
Interesting. Love it. I will definitely be checking that out, Nick. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you to those at home tuning into the end of the podcast. I love you. I think Nick loves you too, right, Nick?
Yep. So take care, everyone.
Take it easy. See you. Bye-bye.